Test the mic. Oops, yep, mic is working. Let's do the crossfade, and here we are. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a live stream for DGST 101, Intro to Digital Studies at the University of Mary Washington. Let me cut down the music. For the music, by the way, if you're interested, I'm using this thing called Pretzel. I don't actually know what Pretzel is, other than I think it might be owned by Spotify actually, but the premise of it is that you can stream music that is copyright free, so you don't have to worry about getting takedowns or other strikes for both Twitch and YouTube. So that's helpful. That's why I'm using it, and it's also, I mean, the music's decent, especially if you just need kind of, you know, not super important background music to play while you're doing something else. So anyway, good morning, welcome to class. Today is day 2 of week 1. Yesterday was day 1 of week 1, and I did a live stream yesterday. I put that live stream in a playlist, by the way, and I'm going to keep adding to that playlist on my YouTube channel, so you'll see it there on the YouTube channel. Actually, I don't know. I think I need to put it on the main page of my YouTube channel, but I linked to it in the announcement that I sent out this morning in Canvas, so you can find it there. I'll be putting all the live streams there, and maybe a few other kind of short tutorial videos that I find helpful sometimes to make. But today is going to be about kind of continuing to build your website. So hopefully yesterday, if you accomplished the goals for yesterday, that your main goal was to create a domain and register for it on UMW Domains. Some of you have done that and already gone ahead and started building content there with WordPress. That's great. If you haven't done that yet, that's great too, because I have a chance to explain a few things to you to help you figure make some good choices about that process. If you still need to make a domain, you will need to do that before you do any of the steps that I show you today, but you know, these are all being recorded, so you can go back in time and review these at your convenience as you need to. And of course, I'm happy to help at any step, right? So even if you're doing this like today's Tuesday, let's say you're working on this like Friday night, that's okay. I can still help you with this content. Like this is my job. I'm just putting it out in order so that it makes more sense. Okay, so let's take a look at Canvas. This is the notes and instructions for today, June 22nd. You've got a domain, but now you need to put content on the domain. So that's your main goal for today, is to get to that point where you can put content on that. There's a specific post that I would like for you to create, and that comprises your Hello World assignment. It's deceptively simple in that I'm just asking for a simple blog post, but you have to have a domain, you have to have something installed on that website that you can use to post a blog thing. So like there's several steps before that, but that is kind of your end goal really for today, probably would be to complete the Hello World assignment and submit it here in Canvas. But the instructions, as you see, are very minimal. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about that assignment itself, please let me know, but I don't think there's really anything complicated about it. I think it's there. It's just the complicated part is what comes before, which is what I'm going to cover a bit today. Also today, if we have time, I want to talk about the creativity modules. That's your first, your other major assignment this week. And there's a few things you should know about it. I can give you kind of the general introduction to it, maybe a more detailed introduction tomorrow, but it's meant to be something you can do and explore, on your own and work together. Not together necessarily, but alongside some of your peers who might be working on similar things. Okay, so thanks for saying good morning. I see a few MH Finn and Nandy Davis on Twitch saying hello, so good morning. Thanks for saying hello. If you are out there and you're watching, wherever you're watching, or whatever chat thing you have available, if you don't mind saying hello, that's always nice to see who's out there. I see 8 viewers according to my dashboard, which is great. Really, as long as there's at least one, I'm happy to do it. But since these are being recorded, it's fine to watch it later too. All right, let me switch out of this mode here and OBS. Cool. Okay, so today, I've got a lot of things explained here on the instructions page. And I actually have a little slideshow that I want to use to explain one of the fundamental concepts that I think is going to be helpful as you start thinking about the landscape and I guess the architecture of your domain now that you have it. So I've got a slideshow, and let me put it here. Let me just grab the link in case you want to look at this on your own or review it later. It's actually very short, but here's a slideshow in case you want to do it on your own. So that's my mechanical keyboard, by the way. is the alright, so pretty loud, right? Oops, actually that's the wrong link. Hang on a second. Let me, I have a better link. Let me give you not the public HTML link, but the view link. Actually, this URL is better. Okay, let me put that same one in Twitch. Okay, so if you are watching right now and you are also watching either of the chat spaces, I just want to take a quick pause and kind of highlight what I just did when I shared that. First of all, I wanted you to have this content, right? So it's a URL, so it's a big long thing that I copied and pasted. But I didn't just copy and paste the URL, like I didn't just drop it in there. I want to encourage you all to get out of the habit of just posting a URL by itself with no context, right? So even a brief sentence like I posted right there, here's the slideshow I'm using today. It gives you a sense of context for that. If you're not watching this live, then you wouldn't have that context without my statement that this is what this is. So a lot of you, when you shared your domains in the general, you just pasted the URL for your domain. I'd like for you to do better. I'd like for you to add more context. So when you complete your hello world post, I'd like for you to say like even half a sentence, like, hey, here's my first post. What do you all think? Then paste the URL. That's always better than just pasting a URL by itself. Discord is not a Dropbox. It's not just a place to dump your stuff. It's a place to have a conversation, even if it's a brief conversation. So make sure that whenever you share things that you explain what the thing is that you're sharing, so that the people that you're sharing it with will have some sense of context and have some motivation to click. I mean, you all probably don't know each other, so just the fact that someone posted a link isn't automatically going to suggest anything to you. So you want to give your peers that opportunity to understand your content by providing that context. So always, I mean, really in any context, you should always provide that context and that explanation, right? So don't just count on a link to speak for itself. Okay, so here we are, week 1, day 2. So our goals are to set up some way to post content on your website or your domain. Website, domain, these are kind of, they're not exactly synonyms, but I'll probably use them interchangeably, as you probably do as well. Your goal is to create an introductory post, and that is really the Hello World assignment. But along the way, you will find it useful to start customizing your site and doing some things to kind of harden your WordPress site if you're using WordPress, so that it is going to be work well for you and also going to be a safer experience for you. And then also I'll take a look at the digital creativity modules as we get into that. All right, so I'm going to get started talking. I want to talk a little bit about URLs, what that is, and if you have questions as I'm going, of course, feel free to put them in the chat. But I'm going to move sort of quickly just because this is being recorded, and you can always review, go back, rewind, and look at different parts of it if something I say isn't clear. But I'd be happy to clarify. I would love to clarify if you do have a question as I'm going. Okay, so make sure we can see this. Okay, all right, good. So URLs. I don't usually do this lecture, but I think this is going to be a useful thing. So, which is, I want to make sure that you all understand what I'm talking about when I say URL. And it's a term you probably know, you've probably used it before, but maybe you haven't thought a lot about what it means and what the different parts of it are, because the different parts of a URL, I think, will help me explain and help you understand the different things that you're doing when you build your website and the different places where you're putting things. Your website is actually a computer. It's a computer designed to be a web server as opposed to be a personal computer, but it's got a lot of the same features, a lot of the same things in it, like the fact that it has files and folders on it. And the URL is a way to access specific content on a web server using that file and folder structure. And there's some nomenclature, there's some terminology that I think will help pick this apart. All right. So URL, right? URL is something that we see all the time. It's in the address bar. It's the thing that you type in. It's the thing that you paste somewhere for someone to click on a thing to see a thing. And it's something that we see a lot. Now, it's worth noting here, by the way, that the thing that you see in the address bar can be very different depending on your web browser. And this is one reason. I'm using Chrome right now. I've been trying to get away from Chrome and use Firefox more, but in general, I definitely recommend Chrome or Firefox, really Firefox. I do not recommend Safari or Edge, which are your default browsers on Mac and Windows respectively. And one of the reasons is that Safari actually decides you don't actually need to see the URL. It will actually hide most of the information that a URL has in it, because I don't know why it does that. I guess it figures it doesn't want to inconvenience you with information. But when you're trying to build a website, this is the kind of information you need to know and you need to be able to work with. So I really don't like Safari for that, or at least I don't like that aspect of Safari. Other aspects of it are fine, but that specific design choice they made, I think, is really harmful, honestly. Like it makes you know less about the computer that you're using and the websites that you're using. So there's a lot of information there that Safari simply does not show you, which I find frustrating. Chrome does show you most of the things, but there is one aspect that Chrome will by default hide from you, and I'll show you that in a moment. But when we're talking about a URL, we're talking about the thing that goes here, right? The thing that you can copy and paste and see, or you can click on and go to, right? So uniform, URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator, and I mean, I think that term is kind of self-explanatory, I guess, but maybe worth explaining a little bit. When we talk about a resource, we're talking about content. So that's an HTML, a web page, an image, a video, some piece of web content. That's the resource, and we're trying to locate it. We want to know where it is so that it can be downloaded to our browser or our phone so we can see it. All right, that's what we're trying to do when we access the web. And it's uniform, just meaning that there's a pattern that they always have to follow. If they don't follow the pattern, they won't work. So that's what that means. Another term for this is web address, and I think that's also a helpful way to think about it. It's an address, just like your house has a street address. Every website has an address on the web, and your domain is part of that, right? You're able to put things at your personal, home on the web by adding it to your domain. And then different parts of that have different sub addresses, which is what the URL talks about. All right, so this is a URL. This is not a real one, it is a real URL, but there's nothing there if you were to browse to this. This is just meant to be a demonstration because this URL has many of the features that you're likely to encounter in your own website as you start building things. So there are lots of different parts of this, and what I've got set up here is I've highlighted the different parts of it so I can talk about what they're doing and what they are, and I'm going to work my way from the outside in to explain these. All right. So the first one here is the protocol, and this stands, well, let me move there so you can see the P. It's the word protocol. This is the one you probably won't really see. There's only two options that you're likely to encounter for this, HTTP and HTTPS. HTTPS is basically better, just means it's encrypted, but it stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This tells the web browser that this is a web page, and that's what we need to see here. Since that's actually always the case whenever you're using a web browser, it's kind of redundant in a way that you visually don't need to see it, and so that's why I kind of don't mind Chrome hiding that from you, except that it is important to know if you're using HTTP or HTTPS, and you can see that in this case I am using HTTPS because Chrome has highlighted, well, I don't know if you can see the highlight where it pops up, but there's a little lock icon that means this is HTTPS. Protocol just means what is the when we're accessing a URL, we're talking about two computers talking to each other right now, like my desktop and a web server, and a protocol just determines the kind of conversation they're going to have, like what kinds of information are they going to send back and forth, right? And if it's a web page, it's going to be HTTP. Okay, so moving on the other side, this is the file extension, and whenever you create HTML by hand, this is something that you will need to know. A file extension determines what kind of thing the browser should do to that file in order to show it to you. HTML means it's going to render it using hypertext markup language. There are certainly other file extensions you will encounter, like JPEG for an image, PNG for different kinds of images, MP4 for videos, and each of those has a different set of software that the browser needs to use in order to show it correctly, and so the file extension gives a signal to that software to say, hey, this is what you need to do with that. All right, now you won't usually deal with file extensions if you're working just in WordPress, but you may see them, and I wanted you to know what they are. It always shows up after the dot on the file name. This is also the case on your computer. Every file on your computer also has a file extension. Again, kind of like what Safari decides about your URL. By default, either Windows or Mac, you are not going to see those file extensions. You have to change a setting somewhere so that you can see them, but I think it is really important to know that there are different file extensions and what they do. So I really recommend activating file extensions so you can see them when you're working on your computer. But that's a slightly different topic. Bless you. Okay, so the file name, this is the name of the file, the content. You're probably not going, well, actually, let me just make a brief observation here about the URL. One thing you should take a note of is, as you look at my URL, this is where if I were in an interactive, like in-person class, I would ask you this live. Let me answer. So digital signal, I see your question there. What is .htm? .htm is a synonym for HTML. It's same thing. And sort of the background is that on some computers like Windows 98, you could only have a 3-letter file extension. So HTM is like the shortened version of HTML. So that's all that is. Okay, so so the question I would pose if we were live is like, what do you notice anything about this URL, and some things that are missing, or the kinds of things that are not here that you might see? That's kind of a weird way to pose that question, but I want you to notice that let me just kind of go back to the URL by itself. I want you to notice that all the letters are lowercase, right? I really recommend, even if you're just naming files on your computer, all lowercase, like that just, because sometimes it actually makes a difference and sometimes it doesn't, but if you'd rather not even try to remember whether or not it makes a difference, just make everything lowercase, right? That's what I do. The other thing is no spaces. So I've got a hyphen in this file name. You can use, I mean, it's not going to usually break things or ruin things if you do have spaces, but it can be confusing. So I recommend no spaces, no capitals, all lowercase all the time, right? If you need separation, you can use a hyphen or an underscore, but yeah, all lowercase. It's a good habit to get into. Okay, so file extension, this is the file name, hello world. Okay, so now we're getting into some things that you've probably come across already if you've started trying to set up your site. So this is a subdomain that goes in front of the main domain there. It's pink in this illustration, and that is a little confusing because there's also this term subdirectory, and those are not exactly equivalent, but they do work in pretty similar ways by sectioning off part of the site. A subdirectory is easier to think of that as like a folder on your computer. Like that's a place where you put some stuff that goes together. That's really what a subdirectory is, whereas a subdomain is like a whole different desktop, a whole different area, right? Functionally, they're actually pretty similar in terms of how you might use them on your domain, but they are actually different, right? And there's a couple of quirks to how that's set up. Like you probably will run into problems if you have a subdomain and a subdirectory with the same name, just because of the way that it's set up. But anyway, those are different things and they have different names, but they are similar names. So this is where it gets a little confusing. That's why I'm putting this slide together. I wanted to show you these things, right? So subdomain goes in front of the domain, subdirectory goes after. Cool. So, oops, let me move on. All right, so this part here, this is the TLD or top level domain. You've already signed up for a domain, and so when you did that, you chose the TLD. Now that you've chosen it, you don't need to know much more about that, other than if I ask you what is your TLD, that's what I'm asking for, is whatever comes after the dot on your domain name. There's a whole bunch of these, right? I mean, .net, .org, and .com are still the main ones. But of course you've got .edu. You're not allowed to create a .edu unless you're an educational institution. But you know, historically these used to have special purposes. .org, .net, and .com were meant to be used in specific ways. There's no enforcement on those now, so you can do whatever with those. There is enforcement on .edu. There's a whole marketplace of like new TLDs coming out. There's like hundreds of them now, and they can be kind of funny sometimes, but they're also kind of quirky. So people like aren't really used to them yet, right? So whenever you're creating a domain, I do really recommend still sticking with those main 3 ones, and because if you make it something like I think like .horse is funny. So like if I was Zach Whalen .horse, that would be kind of confusing to people that don't know that .horse is actually a domain name. All right, so anyway, so this is the final thing, the domain itself, right? So Zach Whalen, in my case, zachwhalen.net is my main domain that I use. And these are the parts of a URL. There are a few more things, but this is this is most of it. Like this is most of what you'll encounter if you're dealing with this kind of thing. Notice there is some syntax. I didn't mention any of the punctuation, but there are periods separating the subdomain and the domain and the TLD. There are forward slashes separating any subdirectories, and then a dot again separating the file extension. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know, but I'm going to move on because I think that's, I don't know, I think that's pretty clear. I hope it is. Okay, so when you're creating your website, you've already got the domain figured out, but now you have a choice because you're going to need to set up a way that you can post content on your website. I am going to recommend WordPress for this, but there are other options. Whatever options you choose, you're going to need to put that software somewhere on your website. And there's kind of three options, and I have a recommendation and something I don't recommend. So if you've already done the thing I don't recommend, I mean, you could go back and redo it, but it's ultimately not super important. It's just, you know, just my recommendation. My recommendation is a subdomain. So since this class is DGST 101, you might want to make a subdomain called dgst101.zachwhalen.net. Or you might just want to make a generic subdomain for all of your coursework. So you might want to call that like school.zachwhalen.net or classes.zachwhalen.net. Of course, substitute your actual domain name for zachwhalen.net when I say zachwhalen.net. Whatever you want to do with that is fine, but I really do like separating out the content that you create for me, for your classes, from content that you make for yourself. And ultimately, this is your domain, and I feel like the best way to take ownership of that domain is to decide what goes on it. So whenever you're looking at and thinking about your equivalent of zachwhalen.net, I really recommend, I mean, I can give you advice about that, but I really think that's your space. And so I don't want to tell you what to do for that. I do need you to do some things so I understand your progress with this class. So that's where I am going to ask you to put some things on the site, but you know, put that in a bucket somewhere else. Put that in its own little box in a subdomain so that you can have it there for now. But at the end of this term, if you don't need it anymore, just delete it. Like, it's totally fine, right? This is your space to do these things with. So Digital Signal has an interesting question. There's a long answer to that, but I can, let me finish what I'm explaining here, and I'll get back to your question, Digital Signal. So subdirectory, again, goes after the domain name, as you can see here, zachwhalen.net/dgst101. And that's good. You know, that's a way to do it. That's fine if you want to do it that way. Again, you could do the same thing with classes, you know, call it classes or something like that. What I don't recommend is adding both, right? So I don't recommend adding both a subdomain and a subdirectory just because it's long, like it's unnecessarily long. You want to keep things as short as possible, so just a subdomain is good, or just a subdirectory, but not both. And many of you might have already done this and ended up with both, because there's actually part of the workflow when you install WordPress will sort of steer you that direction, but I don't think it should. I think I wish it didn't do that. So I'll show you that step when I get to it in a minute. Okay, so Digital Signal has an interesting question. Why without www some web pages won't be found? Good question. So I don't know if I can even show you an example of this, but like my website is zachwhalen.net. So www.zachwhalen.net will in fact work, but it's actually going to redirect to just http zachwhalen.net. In the olden times, whenever we had internet servers, and I mean, this is still the case, but I'm thinking back to like the 90s, oftentimes you would have an internet server with a domain and a top-level domain, so zachwhalen.net in my case. And you might serve content from that server with different protocols. So things that aren't not just a web page. I don't have an illustration for this. I'm just sort of talking with my hands. So you would have different kinds of things that you would provide through your internet server, through your domain, besides a web page. And the idea is that you would put your web page in a subdomain called www. So www.zachwhalen.net would be the web page, but you might have a Gopher directory that would be using the Gopher protocol. So you might put that in like gopher.zachwhalen.net. Oh, and you might have an FTP directory, and you might want to serve that through use the FTP protocol, and you might put that into a subdomain called ftp.zachwhalen.net. So yeah, the different purposes, but you know, those different uses have really faded out, and most of the time people are, when they have a domain, they're using it for the web. So most web hosts, and this is actually set up on the host, not on my server, but most hosts will just make www equivalent to the root level of the domain. So some hosts don't set it up that way. It's actually a setting on the server that can make that equivalence. And most are set up that way, especially if you're doing shared hosting, which is what we're doing here. But but that's not necessarily the case. It's not necessarily built into the protocol. So you might come across some sites where that doesn't work, or where you have to go like web. That was for a while. There was kind of a, I guess, a debate between should that subdomain be web.zackwhalen.net or www.zackwhalen.net. But www ended up winning. And again, I'm talking about like 1996, so it's been a while since this has been a real issue. Okay, so Nadia has a question: is .net and .com more common for personal blogs and websites rather than edu and org? Yes, I mean .com much more so, I think. Kind of because .com is like initially .com was sort of like the generic website for a company, so .com means commercial. So that was kind of the idea, is like you're a company, you have a store or something, and so it's your store.com. But increasingly, no one really cares about what these top-level domains actually mean. But edu does mean educational institution, and so in that case, you're not going to use one of those. So because you're not you individually are not an educational institution. .org was initially supposed to mean nonprofit organizations, and I think it still kind of has that connotation, but it's not enforced or in any way. So if you've created one and you feel like it sounds good, ultimately I kind of go with between .org, .com, and .net. I kind of go with what sounds good, right? So in my case, zackwhalen.net is kind of that repeated in sound at the end of my name and the beginning of .net. And I think that kind of works, so I like that. But also, like, there is, like, I have zackwhalen.net, but I have a ton of subdomains and other sites built onto this site. So there's actually a lot here. So it is kind of a network of sites, but it's ultimately not super important. There are, of course, others that are popular, like .info, .us, .tv, .io. Yeah, there's more. I'm just kind of drawing a blank, but those are the main ones that I would recommend. Yeah, and really, if you're not sure, if you don't want to overthink it, .com is fine. Okay, good questions. Let me move on. I think I'm almost done with the slide. I might be actually done. Yeah, I am done with the slideshow. So that's it. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go into my domains dashboard, and I'm going to show you how to do two things with sub things associated with them. I'm going to show you how to create a subdomain, and I'm going to show you how to install WordPress on that subdomain so that you can start adding content there. Okay. So it's going to take me a minute to get logged in here, so I'll kind of feel free to ask any questions while I'm getting myself into the right place. So I have multiple UMW domains accounts, so I have to drill into the one I want to work on today. And so some of what I'm going to do here is will be different, but I will try to explain what's different about it as I do. Okay, so cool. So this is my actual dashboard, and you can see a few things that are going to be different for you, but this is mostly the same. So what I'm looking at here is it's something called Cpanel, and Cpanel is really the kind of like ultimate control panel of your website, and you won't spend a lot of time here really, but it is a place where you can do all kinds of things, including access some really powerful tools like some scripting tools, and you can access your web server through a command line if you know what you're doing with that. Really a ton of stuff. The main thing that you'll be doing here really is installing and removing and updating software like WordPress, right? And you can see this particular account, I've got tons of installations of WordPress already, and that's what you see here, which is my applications. But we're not going to do that yet. First of all, I want to show you how to create a subdomain. I'm going to go through the steps here. If you're, I don't know if I recommend following along while I do this. This is being recorded, so you can just play it back if you'd like. But I'll talk about each step as I do it, so hopefully you remember. Okay, so I've clicked on, actually, let me back up. So this is the domains area of the cPanel dashboard. You can do different things here, but don't mess with anything else. Just the subdomains, that's all we want to do right now. Okay, so a subdomain has to have a name. It should be all lowercase, and you cannot use spaces. So like I said earlier, If you need separation, hyphens are good, underscores are good, but all lowercase otherwise. I'm going to make mine ridiculous so that I remember to delete it later. So like you might want to make yours, class or school or DGST 101 or DGST or something like that. Keep it short if you want, but I'm going to make this one super long. This is a remember to delete it later. Okay, so don't make yours this long, but that's what I'm doing. And you should choose what domain to put it on. I have several, but you probably just have the one. I'm going to put this one on dgst101.net. Right, so that's going to tell you what you'll see down here is a preview of what this is going to look like on the web. So this is what somebody would type in to see your the subdomain that we're creating, the content of the subdomain we're creating. The document root actually is the name of the folder on the server that it's going to be stored in, but the way they set it up, those are actually going to be, they're going to look the same, so that kind of helps you give a sense of that. Okay, so I'm just taking a double check here, so that looks good. All right, so I'm going to hit create. And you just have to hit create once. Sometimes it takes a couple seconds, and if you hit it twice before it completes, then you'll get an error, but I didn't in this case. So just click it once and just wait a few seconds and it should work. Okay, so then it just takes me back here. Now I've got a bunch of other subdomains here, and you can see I've done this exact demo. Actually, this must be last summer's, come to think of it. But I've done this exact thing quite a few times, so I have quite a few of these domains. But let me show you what it should look like when you're done. What was the one what did I call this one? That's this one, yeah. So this is what it should look like. It should be the name of the subdomain that you just created, .your domain, .your TLD, and then this is the document root, which should be the same, but it's actually a link. Don't click on that link yet, but that's what it should look like. It should say not redirected, so just leave it the way it is, and I can't seem to scroll to the right for some reason, but there's nothing else there. So yeah, so that's it. So that should look good. Okay, so I have created a subdomain, and if I want to, I can browse to it. I'm just going to copy this subdomain, open a new tab, and see what it looks like. Which is, it should look like nothing. Right. Okay, so this is nothing. It says index of, and it's a list of folders, but that's because I've put nothing here yet. There's nothing in it. If I want to, and if you were building your site manually by creating HTML pages by hand, one thing you can do is you can access the directory, the folder that I just created, in the file manager, and you could start adding files and building content here. If you want to do it that way, you can make files. This is kind of the old-fashioned way of making a website, which I really like doing still, but that's not what we're doing today. But this is what you could do if you wanted to. We don't need this, so I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. Instead, we're going to be installing WordPress in this location, so that instead of seeing this blank directory, which is what this is here, instead of this, we will see content that we've created using WordPress. Okay, so let's I would normally pause for questions, but since I'm online and this is being recorded, I'm just going to move on. But if you do have a question, you can put it in either of the chat places, and I will try to get to it. I'm going to go back to the control panel now and take a look at some options here. All right, so we are going to be using something I recommend. Actually, by the way, before I go down too far, where is it? Oh, good, it's been removed. Okay, so I think, yeah, there's sometimes you'll see something called a site builder, but I don't like it, so I don't recommend using it. And I don't see it now, so hopefully you don't see it either. Okay, this is what we're actually doing. This is something called Installatron, which sounds like a Transformers name. So Installatron is software that you can use to install other software. Right? Software is an application. It's an app, right? You might be using the term app. But this is an application that lives on your website and that you can use to create content on your website. So that's what we're doing here. This particular account, oops, I'm in the wrong Cpanel account. Let me switch to the correct Cpanel account. And you can also, you don't have to scroll all the way down to find Installatron. This web applications here is a summary of Installatron right now, and so you can click view more, and you can get to Installatron here as well. Okay, so we're going to take a look over here in the applications browser, and these are all the different things that you can install with Installatron. They each have a logo and a brief summary, and some of these are great, some of these are not. Some of these work really well, some of them don't work at all anymore. Really, there's only there's a lot of options here, but there's really a relatively small number of things that you actually probably will ever use, and that's fine. And then these are in the featured application section. So WordPress is what I'm going to do right now, just vanilla WordPress, but big picture and dimension are actually, and highlights actually, and these two also. These are all like specialized versions of WordPress for specific applications, specific uses. They're pretty good too, but I wouldn't recommend them for the blog that you use for this class. They might be good for your homepage though, so that's something to kind of think about later on. Drupal is great. It's very complicated. I've used Drupal for many years, and I like it a lot for certain kinds of websites, but it's just so much to get into. Same with Grav. I've been using Grav a lot more recently. It's a lot quicker and lighter than Drupal, but still very complex. You have to really, there's a very steep learning curve with both Drupal and Grav. But if you already know what you're doing with web development, they're actually pretty nice. But yeah, it takes a bit to get there. Omeka is great for if you're building some kind of archive, like a cultural collection. Like I'm using Omeka for, I'm making a website that is a catalog of metadata and information about computer-generated books. And so I'm using Omeka to collect all that metadata and present it in a way that you can access, kind of like a library webpage. So that's a very specific application for a website, which is not what you're doing today, probably. We just want a simple blog. So we're going to go to WordPress. Okay, so WordPress is, it's not the oldest, but it's one of the oldest and certainly the most popular software used today for creating blogs. So, a lot of reasons to use it. It is open source, meaning anyone can develop for it. It also means that you can, after you've installed it, you can look at the source code and figure out how it works and make changes to it if you want to. But do that carefully, because if you make a change that breaks it, it might not be possible to fix it. So you want to be careful with that, I suppose. But overall, it's a good it's a good product. It's fine. Okay, so to install it, of course, you need to click the install button, but just click it once. Again, it takes a little second, and you can see there's a little spinner. Well, I pointed out on my screen so you can see where I'm pointing. It's up there at the top right. You can see a little spinner there. It's actually downloading a copy of WordPress and getting it ready in the background. And when it's ready, it's going to pop up this screen, which is where I can start doing some things to install it. Now, there are two aspects of this installation that you have to think about carefully. Other parts, most of this is automatic, but just two things to pay attention to. First is the location, and the second is the admin login details. Okay, so I just made that new subdomain, so I need to find it here in my list of options. Since I've been doing this for a while, I have lots of options, and you probably don't have as many. I'm going to choose this one. I think that's the one I just created, but make sure that it is the one you just created. Make sure it does not have sort of an extra subdomain in there or anything else. It should just be what you just created. And then down here, this says this is going to add a directory to the end of your URL. And if you, as I delete that, you'll see the change applied just below it, where it says the web URL and then the file manager, like the server location of it. And you can see that anything you add here makes it longer, and we want to keep things short, right? That's your general goal should be to keep things as short as possible. So I really it's optional. Delete it. Like, you don't need it. Just delete it. That's fine. Okay, so if you have already done this and you've left one in here, you can't really change it after you've installed it. I mean, you can, but it's easier just to start over again, honestly. So that's fine if you've already installed this with a directory, but I recommend not doing it. All right, so a couple things here. We do want it to update automatically, so we don't have to worry about that. Because WordPress is open source, lots of people try to hack it because it's open source, but also because it's incredibly popular. So tons of websites use WordPress. If a hacker figures out a way to get into a WordPress account, they could very quickly have access to a lot of WordPress accounts. So WordPress there's a company, Automatic, that's the name of the company, is Automatic, that releases updates for WordPress. So to look for security flaws like that, so you want to keep it updated. Let Installatron keep it updated for you. Okay. You can also do the same with plugins. So letting it manage your plugins is also good. And I don't like Well, yeah, I personally like to do my own theme updates because sometimes they can break things, but I would say keep that on. Yeah, and then, yeah, keep the backups. All right, now, so, let me see if there's anything else I can choose. Yes, yeah, keep these all default, yeah. Okay, so here's some stuff where you have a chance to make a decision. Whenever you are installing WordPress, you're creating a sub area of your website that you will need to access that is technically separate from Cpanel, right? I'm using Cpanel right now, but WordPress creates its own thing. You have to decide how do you want to access that WordPress dashboard to start creating your content and building the thing that you see on your website. There are two ways to do it. You can either have it so that you have to log into UMW domains and then Cpanel and then Installatron and then get to your WordPress dashboard. Lots of people like to do it that way because then they don't have to remember the password. Or you can have it set up so you can log in directly to WordPress itself. To do that, you'll need to remember this password that you create here so you can use it. So that's, add something to your memory, to your file, your password manager, I suppose. But I like doing it that way so I don't have to go all the way through all those other logins to get to it. So come up with your administrator username. Doesn't matter what it is, and create a password that you can remember. I'm not going to show you my password, but that's what's going on there. The administrator email should be your UMW email, and then the website title and tagline. You can change this later, so don't worry about that right now, unless you want to. But let me just review. Yeah, I know that's a weak password, but that's okay. I'm going to delete this later today. So I'm going to install. I think that's all good. All right, so clicking install once again, sometimes it takes a second. And you can open the task manager if you want to see how it does, how it's doing. It takes, 30 seconds or so. It's actually very quick. Although I guess we'll see how long it takes because it's actually telling me there's a timer there. I never noticed that before. Yeah. 22 seconds, looks like. Okay, nice. All right, so now I'm going to be able to find it hopefully here. Yeah, here it is. So as you can see, nothing here yet. We will see that there's nothing here yet. But this is how you can access your dashboard for that. Now, there's two ways, right? Like I said earlier, if you want to let Cpanel and Installatron just log in for you, that's fine. And to do that, you just need to click on this link from this page. If you want to log in yourself, you can access this URL directly on a separate tab and then type in your username and password that way. Since I'm here, I'm just going to click on this to go into it. Really? Okay, I guess I need to turn on I need to check my security certificate. Okay, so if you get that, don't worry about it. Anyway, here I am. This is my WordPress dashboard. And now that I'm on WordPress, I can start doing things like creating posts and doing other work on it. So let me just see how this looks. Remember, this was what my subdomain looked like after I had created it, which is just index of blah, blah, blah. But let me refresh and see if that's changed, and it has. So this is my WordPress installation. That's all there is to it. Well, no, it's not all there is to it, but this is now content that's being put together and formatted, and it's designed to look the way it is by WordPress. WordPress is doing this, not me. I didn't write any code for this. I just let WordPress handle this. Okay, so this would usually be a good time for a break, but I'm going to probably keep going just because I feel fine. And if you need to take a break, you can take a break and then come back and watch it later. Which is to say, I'd like to show you a bit more about using WordPress besides just installing it. So I'm going to go into doing that. I want to show you how to create content on your blog now that you have one, and then show you a few kind of next steps in customizing your blog. Okay, so if you have questions, you can still ask, but I'm going to keep moving so that I can get this done. I'll try to wrap this up in, I can go. I'll wrap it up at 11. I think that should work. Okay, so let's take a little bit of a tour of the dashboard. And this is now the WordPress dashboard. So just in terms of terminology, keep that in mind. This is the WordPress dashboard. This is the Installatron dashboard. And this is the, once it loads, this is going to be the control panel. Yeah, so this is the Cpanel dashboard. So you kind of have 3 different dashboards that you will be interacting with at different times. Okay, so this is the WordPress one, and there's a lot of things kind of built in to help you understand what you're doing and kind of to explain different parts of this, right? There's kind of a tour it takes you through. These are good. I mean, I recommend these. I'm going to leave them here, but these are, these are things that you should want to do, right? That you want to write your first blog post. You should add an about page. You should set up a home page. I recommend turning comments off. So these are the things that you should be doing. So you'll see this little thing here when you get started, but I'll leave it there just in case I need to get back to it. All right, so let's make a post. So in WordPress terminology, a post is a blog entry. It's kind of like, here's what's going on today, or here's my thoughts about something, or here's something I just did. A page is something that's always true, like a static content, like your address, like your contact information. So that's something that if you change your contact information, you would just change the content of that page. You wouldn't just publish a new post saying, here's a new address for me. So posts and pages, those are the primary content types on WordPress. You can add others actually, but those are the primary ones. So when you first install WordPress, you get a default post called Hello World, and that's why I've named the assignment Hello World. So if you click on it, you can take a look at what it looks like in the WordPress editor. Yeah, so they have this new thing they call the block editor, or sometimes called Gutenberg. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's fine. So, you can get to know it pretty easily, I think, by kind of clicking through it. I feel like it's got too many little widgets, and it's too complicated. But I like a much cleaner, much simpler way of writing a post. I like to write the code of I like to write in code anyway, but this is fine. So this is where you can change the title, all right, if you want to. This is where you can add different text. If you want to add something besides text, you've got different things. If you click the plus sign, you can add an image, right? And then it gives you this nice little widget where you can just upload an image, and that works fine. You've also got, in a caption. Yes. Nice. So I think what I imagine that if I were to get into the habit of using this, I would like it better. But I'm not really in the habit of it, and you may find it great. I mean, you may really enjoy it, and that's fine, of course. One thing I wanted to call your attention to, though, is this bit over here on the right, all the way over there on the right. This is where you have different aspects of this post that you can set that are not visible on the post necessarily. You can put it into a category, or you can add different tags to help you find this. And one thing I do kind of recommend is use the categories intentionally. Usually you would only have on a site 2 or 3 categories. You might call it assignments, or you might call it, if you're using a WordPress installation for multiple classes, one thing that's nice to do is make a category for each of your classes. So this could be DGST 101, but if you're also taking digital storytelling, you might do a DS 106 category. These are things that you can do kind of that's kind of like a top level, a high level way of structuring your site. That's what categories are usually used for. And then tags are more kind of ad hoc, whatever you think of. One thing that's nice to do, most themes support what's called a featured image, and whether or not it shows up or what it looks like does depend a lot on your theme, unfortunately. So I don't know if this, I don't even know if this one does, but a featured image sometimes will show up as like a header or like across the top of it. But that depends on your theme, and I don't know if this is going to do that or not. Let's take a look at it anyway and see what the preview. Yeah, so this one doesn't. This one just puts the featured image at the top. That's all it does. It doesn't create like a header. That's fine, but that's going to be different depending on different themes. Okay, so that's a post. I honestly, I think this editor is fine. It just sort of, it makes more sense the more you use it. Don't forget to update whatever it does autosave every few seconds, but make sure when you're done, you hit update, and then you can view it on the live version of it on your blog. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, let me show you a couple more things that you probably want to do here. In terms of settings, this is where you can change the Zach's, change the title. Don't change it. Make it back. Please do change your site title. Don't just make it my site, because if you all submit things called my site, I can't tell which is which, and you won't be able to tell which is which either when they're getting posted in Discord. So make sure you change it to something that is actually specific to you. It doesn't have to be your actual name. Of course, but whatever you want to do. And then some kind of subtitle, something other than just another WordPress site. Whatever you want to put there, right? A couple other things you can do on this page, but probably, yeah, don't mess with these because that will make some things not work. And then save the changes when you're done. Okay, something else you might want to do early on is change the way that your name appears on the site. So if you look at this post was authored by admin, which is not my actual name. My actual name is Zach. So I really recommend making sure you change your nickname, the name that people see on your posts, to something other than admin. It could be your actual name, it could be a nickname, whatever you want, but just make it look like you thought about it. Right? Make it look like something besides just admin. And you can change that if you go to the users part of the dashboard and then profile, and you can add your, if you want, you can add your actual name. You don't really have to technically, but then once you add different things here for your nickname or whatever, you can choose what you want it to be displayed as publicly. And I think, just Zach is fine in my case. This uses the Gravatar image, like profile image system. So it already found this image of me looking kind of intense for some reason. But I kind of like it. And then, yeah, you can update it here. Cool. So those are a couple of basic things to get started. Your next steps, and I'm not going to show you this other than to show you where to work on it, is changing the theme and then adding plugins. So if you go to the appearance part, you can see where you can access different themes. I currently just have 3 installed themes, so it's 2021, 2019, 2020. Every year WordPress issues a new kind of default theme, and that's what they're up to right now, I guess. But you can also explore other themes to install. So if you click Add New, which is what I just did, right? So go back here again to show you. You can click Add New and find different themes. And these are just created by anyone, like random people, designers, web design companies, and as I like to say, your mileage will vary, right? Some of these are going to be great. Some of them are going to be not so great. And you can pay for really good. Usually the ones that you pay for are pretty good, but when you're looking at the free ones, it's really hit or miss, honestly. So you can filter based on different features if you want certain things. Like if you want to make sure that they have a featured image header, you can filter so you only get ones with that option. If you want like a grid layout, right? I mean, whatever, right? And then you can see a bunch of suggestions based on that. If you find one you like, then you can try to install it. This one looks pretty generic, but I'll go ahead and install it. Yeah, you click the button to install, and then it downloads that theme. Now this is software, so it's being installed on in your WordPress site, and it takes up space. This is a bit of a tip here, but once you've done some theme shopping, maybe you might end up with 10 or 12 themes you're not using. You should delete them so they don't take up space, because some themes are actually very large if they include images in particular. So go from there. Whatever theme you choose will have some customization options, and you can access that. This is like the customization dashboard. It's like dashboards upon dashboards, and you can do different things here. But the different things that you have here, the different names that are being used for the different things that you can change about your theme, it's all designed by the theme developer. So there are a few consistent patterns to these, but it's not always the same. So if you're having a problem with how your website looks, I may not be able to tell you how to fix it because I don't know every theme that's been created. There's thousands of them. But this is where you would look to change different aspects of what your theme is doing in terms of the layout, the colors, the typefaces, whatever the theme designers have made possible. So those are themes. Themes have to do with how it looks. Plugins are also very important. So let me show you a couple of things here in plugins. Plugins you do need to keep updated. Looks like these need updating, so we'll go ahead and hit update on these. And these add functionality to your website. There are 2 that I recommend strongly, three. Two that are strong and one that's kind of strong. So Akismet anti-spam, absolutely you should install this. In fact, it comes automatically installed, but you have to activate it as well. So you have to click the activate button, and it's going to take you over from your WordPress dashboard over to the Akismet website, which is part of WordPress.com. And I'm not going to do that now, but you have to go through that whole process. You have to get what's called a token from Akismet and then bring it back here and then it'll be running. When you've completed that process, it'll say like you're done. And until you complete that process, you'll keep seeing this button that says you're not done yet. So make sure that you've both activated it and configured it. Otherwise, it's not actually protecting your site, right? So it needs to be, what it's doing here is it's automatically deleting a bunch of spam for you, so you don't have to deal with it. And if you don't have Akismet, you will get spam. I mean, you could get thousands of spam comments per day, and that's a big hassle to deal with. So let Akismet handle that for you. That's my strong recommendation. All right, so there are plenty of other plugins, and you can explore them if you go here where it says plugins, add new, and lots of these things. I like how this one, like one of the most popular one is the classic editor, which turns off that block editor that I was talking about and complaining about earlier. And you can see too, actually Gutenberg, which is sort of the cutting edge version of that, only has 2 out of 5 stars. That's pretty funny. But what you want to look for on these is you want to look for something that has a lot of installations, so 5+ million active installations, and a good rating, 5 out of 5 stars. So this is kind of funny. A lot of WordPress users, it seems, are kind of old school. Okay, so there's a few others. Jetpack is really, I really recommend Jetpack, and you can access it by clicking Install Now. It uses the same WordPress.com account as Akismet. Both Akismet and Jetpack are free, by the way. You can pay for them if you want to, but they are free. But Jetpack adds some additional spam protection and also some nice features like a contact form to your website. So I like it. It's basically a suite of miniature plugins. It's like a whole bunch of plugins packaged together, but they're good. So I recommend it. It's kind of large though, as you can see. It's taking a while to download. Okay, so I'm not going to go into actually using Jetpack today, but that's what I'm doing there. The third one that I recommend is WordFence. So taking a minute to search for some reason, but WordFence adds even more security. So yeah, there it is. So you can do, it's this one here. And WordFence is, well, it says it's comprehensive security protection. There is a free version and then a paid version, but the free version is great, so I recommend it. What it does is it prevents, it does the same, it adds additional kind of comment spam checking, but it also does things like DOS. I think it has DDoS protection. Basically, if someone starts trying to brute force spam your site, it'll block that IP address automatically, things like that. So it's a good thing to have. It mostly just runs in the background and does its thing, and you don't have to worry about it, right? So every now and then it'll send you notices, and you can change whether or not you want to get those notices. Like it'll tell you if someone tried to log into your website, all right? And if that wasn't you, then you might, it's good to know. And it'll tell you, WordPress will tell you whether or not they were successful. So if someone succeeded to log into your website, you would definitely need to take some action. But if they didn't succeed, then that's fine. Okay, so I want to wrap things up pretty soon, but that was a quick tour of the WordPress dashboard, but mainly the processes. If we review our goals for today, let's see if we did these things. Go all the way back to the beginning of my slideshow. So you want to set up a way to post content on your website. The way I'm suggesting you do that is with a subdomain where you have WordPress installed in that subdomain. Once you have that, I would like for you to create an introductory post introducing yourself and explaining your choices, like why you set up the website the way you did, and really just start customizing it. So that's it. And that really comprises the content of the Hello World assignment. So once you've completed all that, submit that in Canvas, submit the URL to your post for that assignment page, on that assignment page in Canvas, and that'll be great. The other thing, I know I've gone for about an hour and I do want to wrap it up, but let me kind of look ahead a bit to the digital creativity modules, because that's the other big thing going on this week. Once we've got your website established, you're just going to kind of be using it, and so we're going to, we have lots of other content to get to this class. Okay, so let me show you that, and then I'll wrap it up. And then, of course, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in here. So let's take a look on the assignment page. The digital creativity assignment is here, and I'll give you kind of a quick introduction to it. But basically what you need to do right now, I guess you could add this to homework for today, is take a look at the choices. So on DGST101.net, I've created a bunch of different modules, and like normally in a fall to spring class, I like to give people the choice among all of them, but there's something like 12 different creativity modules. For this class, I would like for you to choose from one of these 4, and that is so that you have a good chance of having at least one other person working on the same module as you. And it's going to be helpful to have that cohort so you can compare notes, so you can share your work as you're working on it, and you can help each other figure out things if you need help. But for now, just take a look at these, and I'll take a look at, yeah, I'll just go ahead and pop all these open in separate tabs, and so we can look at them each in turn. So a module is, yeah, some people misread this, so I want to make sure to explain it. A module is an idea, a topic, a skill set, a genre. It's a set of things to do around a theme or an idea or a genre or whatever the term is. They're I think pretty coherent, but they can go a lot of different directions. So the art of the animated GIF is one of the most popular modules, so it's also pretty thorough here. The idea is that you should learn some things and try some things, but which things you learn and what you do with them is largely up to you. I just want you to be able to talk about, at the beginning, talk about your goals, what you want to learn and what you want to do, and then at the end, talk about what you did learn and what you did, right? So it's something where it's an opportunity for you to learn more about animated GIFs and make some, and here are some things that will help you do that. But what you learned about it, what you decide to do about that, these are things that are up to you. So even though I have a lot of things on this page, you don't have to do all of these things. You don't have to do any of these things. You do have to do something though. So your first post will be telling me what thing you're doing, like what do you plan to do with this and why did you choose this module? And then you'll spend a little time, a couple days, working on animated GIFs, and then at the end of that you'll record a video reflecting on what you did. That's it, right? Lots of suggestions here. We obviously this is a compressed term, so we're doing things much more quickly. Normally this would be a 2 or 3 week kind of things, and you would spend some time developing these ideas and kind of brainstorming with your peers and stuff. But we don't have time for that in the summer, so a couple days, right? And get what you can get done what you can in a couple days, and that'll be good. So animated GIFs, right? I assume you have seen animated GIFs before. This module actually used to be a lot harder because it used to be harder to make animated GIFs, but it turns out it's actually pretty easy now. So there's lots of web tools that you can use, like Imager has one and Giphy.com has one to make an animated GIF based on a video. So if you have a video you want to make a GIF from, you can get it done in a few seconds. It's actually a really great tool, but because it's so easy, there's a little bit less of a learning curve. And so I kind of want you to push yourself a bit. I would encourage you, if you're going to make that kind of GIF that you can do in a few seconds, make a bunch of them and see which ones, compare your results, like what's a good one. Or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way by animating by hand or something, like that's great too, right? That but try to push yourself beyond your comfort zone with this module, right? This is an opportunity. Okay, so creative coding. I actually teach a whole class on creative coding. I'm teaching it this fall. So there's kind of too much to say about creative coding, but it's a lot of people like to make Twitter bots for this if they do this module, but you can also do other kinds of computer-generated poetry, different kinds of programmatic art. When I teach the class, what is this? Oh, neat. Okay, sorry, I didn't add this tool. Someone else added. Like, there are other faculty that teach this class, and so we contributed to this at different times. But I need to check out Cloud9. Anyway, what I like is I really had a lot of fun using P5.js recently. It's a JavaScript kind of thing. It's a JavaScript library that implements processing in JavaScript, which is kind of a whole. That's a lot of words put together. That may not make any sense to you, but it's a way that you can very quickly make animations if you kind of know what you're doing, basically. But I don't know. Let's see. Let's just make a quick circle. So just by writing a few lines of code, you can do. Let's make a red circle. Oh, it didn't work. Of course it didn't. Why did it not work? Maybe I can't do fill. Maybe I can't do color keywords. I don't know. I don't need to show you this right now. I'll have to refresh my memory on P5.js, but P5.js is great. A lot of good website, a lot of good tutorials on YouTube by a guy named Daniel Schiffman. So I strongly recommend those. Interactive fiction. So this is, most people are going to do text-based interactive fiction, and really Twine is probably the way to go for this, especially if you just have a couple days, because the learning curve for Twine is very friendly. It is, in fact, what's going on with these security certificates? So these, it's a tool that lets you create hypertext stories very quickly. The thing that couple of notes about this, because sometimes people get confused. I don't recommend using it online because it's a little bit misleading. You're not actually online when you're using it here. I really recommend downloading it. I'm going to use it online for now just to show you how it works. No, I don't want to do that. But yeah. So actually, this is a good demonstration of it. When you use it online, like I'm doing right now, you always have the chance that things will get deleted. And that's what's happened here. My stories that I created here are not, that I was showing someone yesterday, are not here anymore. But that's okay. If you download Twine before you start using it, you won't have this problem. But here's what Twine is. It lets you create stories very quickly. A story about a rainy day in June. I woke up. It was raining. All right, so not sure if I should get up or hit the snooze button. So now I've implied that there are two choices, and I can make those two choices selectable choices that a reader can make by viewing the story. So let's see, should I get up? I put two square brackets around it like that, or should I hit the snooze button? Oops. Let me do it like that. So now that I've done that with that simple bit of syntax, I put two square brackets around each of those things that I want to make into links. Then Twine will, actually just make this start. Twine will make those separate passages, and then I can start writing what would happen if I got up, or what would happen if I hit the snooze button, and then you can make successive choices from there. And you can see what it looks like if you hit the play button. You can see the links here to click on, and then you go from there, right? So you can very quickly make something pretty complicated and interesting with Twine if you want to. Now, again, the thing is, though, you cannot actually share this URL, and this URL is also not permanent. So this, what I'm doing here is a very quick way to demo something, but it's not really reliable. If you want to share it with somebody, what you have to do is down here on the bottom left, click Publish to File, and then that gives you a file that you can download. In my case, this one's called demo.html, and then you can upload that as an attachment on a WordPress post if you want to, or you can put it up on your website in different ways. So that was interactive fiction. But yeah, and then digital audio, that's the final one. It's basically podcasting, I think, is really what most people do with this. So if you want to do this one, then certainly there's lots of ways you can do that. I don't actually have it in here, but Anchor is a really good podcasting tool that a lot of people have had success with recently. It's actually owned by or part of Spotify somehow, but it's an app that you can install on your phone, and it just is built for recording and also for publishing podcasts. So, you know, I definitely recommend checking out Anchor. It's like Anchor. I should update this page too. So it's anchor.fm. Yeah. Cool. So check that out if you're interested in digital audio, or this kind of digital audio. If you want to do you could also do like music if you want to get into something like GarageBand for that. Okay, so those are the modules. That was kind of quick, but I'll talk more about these tomorrow. I just wanted to give you a kind of a preview so that you know what's coming up, and also to give you a chance to start thinking about it. Once you've decided on which one to do, go ahead and commit to it, by posting in the appropriate channel in Discord. So if you look at our channels, I've made a new category for channels under a new category called modules that includes a channel for each of these different modules that I showed you today. So take a look at your modules, and once you've decided, then go into the appropriate channel and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. And then once you've created a post on your website about it, then you can post a link to that in your channel, and then start having a conversation there with your peers who are also working on that module. Okay, so I think I'm done for today. I haven't seen any questions for a little bit, so I hope this is okay. I will be putting this video on my YouTube playlist, and since I covered a lot today, I will go through and put like timestamp links to the different topics that I cover in case you want to review this later and you have a specific question about it. Okay, so that's it. Oh yeah, I am going to be, I'll do office hours again today from 1 to 3 in Discord on that channel, so if you want to join me and say hi, that would be great. If you have questions, that's great, or if you just want to say hi, that's fine too. I'll just be hanging out there working on things, so, you know, yeah, it's up to you. It's totally optional. All right, so I don't have a good like outro thing for my channel at the moment, so I guess I could put it back. Could switch back to this thing. Yeah, no. I don't know. I need to set up a good like outro scene in OBS. Since I don't have that now, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this off. Thanks for watching today. If you have any questions, let me know. Join me in office hours or send me a message, and I'll be happy to help. Okay, well, good luck getting your website set up. Let me know if you run into any problems or have questions, and otherwise I will see you again online tomorrow.